Well, thank you.
Oh.
And welcome,
Georgia
everyone.
ruined the party.
This is the September 17th, 2020 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Monroe. It is 7:05 p.m. And I am Michael O'Reilly, Chairman, and I will call the meeting to order. I'm first going to read the information regarding this electronic public meeting. On March 14th, in response to the COVID pandemic and an effort to reduce the risk of transmission by virtue of attendance at public meetings, Governor Lamont suspended in-person open meeting requirements for permits and conducting public meetings remotely by conference only, video conferencing and only technology. Accordingly, the town of Monroe has selected GoToMeeting as the preferred technology. In compliance with Executive Order 7B1, this technology will permit 250 members of the public to participate in real time via computer, smartphone, or telephone. It's highly recommended that interested participants download and utilize the GoToMeeting software. The link is published on the agenda. Each meeting may have a unique participation code, phone number, and link. Please make sure you're at the right meeting. Notice is hereby given that this meeting shall permit the public to view or listen anonymously and, when permitted, participate in real time. Will be recorded and posted to the town's website within 7 days and made available to the public within a reasonable time. In addition to the standard parliamentary procedures, please mute your microphone to reduce background noise when you're not speaking, and prior to speaking and on each occasion, each speaker shall clearly state their name and title for the record. The use of the chat feature is prohibited. Okay. So we're going to call the roll. Just indicate that you're here. Bruno Maini.
Here.
Ryan Condon.
Here.
Leon Ambrosi.
Here.
Rob Westland.
I'm here.
Rick Schultz.
Here.
Will Agresta.
Here.
Georgia Contois.
Here.
And Sarah Stroud.
Ron Schneider's here.
Ron Snyder.
Oh,
too.
Ron Schneider, all right.
Hey.
So you
I
have
believe
4
Dominic
members.
is still absent.
Okay. So I guess we should seat an alternate, so we have 5. Ryan? Do you know who's up for alternate seating?
I think it's Ron, right? Wasn't Rob seated last week?
I was.
Rob?
So Dominic's not here, so Ron is seated this week.
Well, that's pretty easy. All right. So Ron is seated, is that correct?
Ready.
Ryan? Did you say Rod or Rob?
Ron.
Ron. Schneider.
Schneider.
Schneider is seated.
Okay.
This is Riley, who said open land. You believe it?
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to have general public participation. I think the public is here. Guidelines for public participation. The Commission welcomes public participation and asks that the speakers please limit their comments. Speakers are requested to first state their name and address for the record. Speakers may offer objective comments about planning and zoning matters and land use related concerns that should be brought before the Commission. The Commission will not permit any expression of personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Commission or members of the Planning and Zoning Department, or any person connected to the town of Monroe, or any individual firm or corporation. Speakers are not to comment on any suggested, proposed, or pending application before the Commission, except at a public hearing, for which we are not having any tonight. The chair has the discretion to limit time to 3 minutes per speaker. Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the commission tonight? Okay, good. So then next on the,
Georgia.
sorry?
This is Georgia. I have an email that was received. It is specific to the application for 64 Cambridge and 4 Independence Drive from intervener Pete Metropolis. He sent in some pictures and some information, but given we are not opening that hearing tonight, we're just going to add it to the record, and I will send it out to the commissioners for review prior to the next meeting.
Okay, good. Thank you, Georgia.
You're welcome.
So next on the agenda is number 4, the POCD status update. I think Francisco is here with us.
I am.
Great. Do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I will share my screen. And
Give me 1 second.
Yep. And please let me know when you can see my screen.
We've got you, Francisco.
Okay. All right, thanks everyone. And I just put it in presentation mode. I want to make sure you can still see it all right. And is that still okay?
Can you make it so that the left panels? Yeah, that's good.
Is that good? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So our agenda for this evening, we've had an active survey now for about a month and a half, and to date we've had about 2,200 participants, which is excellent. So we want to update you on the survey results and give you an overview of what those are. And I did send the summary report to Rick and Will. I'm not sure they've been distributed to you, but there's a lot more than meets the eye. If you read some of the written feedback, it really tells the story, but I'll try to give you an overview this evening. And then we'll get into a discussion about public engagement options for the project. As you probably recall, we had initially planned on doing a large public workshop following our stakeholder meetings last winter and early spring. And of course, that was delayed. So let's get started with the survey results. If you took the survey, you'll remember that we had 20 or so multiple choice questions along with some open-ended questions and lots of opportunities to provide comments as well. And as I mentioned, the participation was really incredible. I've had to work really hard to get half of this participation in towns bigger than Monroe. So people in the community are clearly very engaged. This represents 9% of your population. And once you subtract out kids, it just about doubles. So this is a great participation rate. And we've decided to keep the survey link open until we conduct the workshop and for briefly afterwards, so that we can grab anyone that hasn't already participated. We heard mostly from Monroe residents. The survey was open to anyone who has a stake in the game in town. So it was open to, if you work in town, if you own a business or property in town. But we heard mostly, 96% or so from town residents, which is more or less what we expect. But we did hear from folks that work or own a business or property in town too. We also heard from a fairly wide range of residents with respect to tenure in town. The greatest cohort we heard from are people that have been in town from 5 to 20 years, but it was pretty well spread out with decent participation from people that are newer to town, which we don't always get. You can usually count on people that have been around for a while, that are more invested to participate in the process. So I feel pretty good about who we heard from as being representative of a cross section of residents when you look at it by this standard. We heard, and this is pretty reflective of really your housing and the occupancy of your housing. And I have yet to compare it to those statistics, but we heard overwhelmingly from homeowners. We heard from a very small percentage of renters, and then the other folks being business or property owners. So this is very representative of people who own homes in town. We had a distribution of age cohorts. The 40 to 49 age group we heard from most, and underrepresented was people under 30. And a couple of reasons for that. They're a smaller demographic. They're typically just not as civically engaged at that age. They're just busy with other things. So I think we just need to be aware that there's a segment of your population that we really don't know comprehensively what they're thinking. We have some participation, but there's a group that we haven't connected with. All right, when we started asking them questions about what they think about Monroe, we usually start out with a big picture question, such as this one. And this is a very common distribution in that most people are incrementalists about change. They're open to change, but want to do it incrementally. And it's a very even split between people who really want to freeze Monroe in time or go back in time, and people who are really open to some big change and growth. So that's reflective in the comments we received as well, with people feeling the town needs to be doing much more, that they want far greater selection of services and retail and businesses and opportunities. And then other people who think they don't want to see a single additional shopping plaza or store open up in town. They prefer to go back to a more rural character. When we ask people the primary reason that they reside in town, what came to the top were the schools. It was number one. And I recently took a look at the school performance ratings in several of the areas that they're measured. And the school's at 100% in a lot of the various metrics. So you clearly have really good schools in town, and people are saying that that's what's attracting them to town. That and the fact that it's a safe community, and everything else that kind of falls away from there. Interestingly, only 10% of people said they choose to reside in Monroe because they're from Monroe. They grew up there. And when we take a look at some of your population demographics, we see that you have a decent amount of turnover in town. So I suppose it makes sense from that perspective, but it also tells us that maybe you're not doing a great job of holding on to the people that grew up in town that are coming up through your school system. They're leaving, and one of the questions we need to answer is, why? I can tell you that in other small communities, there's a gravitational attraction towards the metropolitan areas, whether it's Boston or New York or elsewhere, and that's one of the issues. Okay, so when we ask people what they value the most in town, it's very consistent. It's schools, once again, is at the top, but also your parks and open spaces. And interestingly, while the parks were very valued, recreation programs weren't as valued. And some other aspects of town, such as your local businesses, historic properties, weren't as valued as schools, parks, and open space. All right, when we asked people, this was a very big list to choose from, what they want the town to place more focus on. And so that when we ask this question, when we say the town, what we mean is leadership in town government, boards and commissions, and really this plan as well. Interestingly, it was economic development to grow the grand list was the most popular choice, and people were allowed to pick more than one thing and up to 5 things. But that stood out at about 56% of people saying that the town should focus more on that. Next to that, and contrasting with that in some ways, was more trails, greenways, and passive open space was the next highest. So this is a very consistent theme throughout the responses that we received, is that there is a desire for the town to grow the grand list, to really, and this comes back to property taxes, right? That's always everyone's concern, is reduce my taxes, grow the grand list, but don't change the character of the town. Preserve our rural character, our open spaces, don't add traffic, but somehow figure out how to use economic development to offset my property taxes, but don't compromise the quality of the education our kids receive in the schools. And that's a very fine line that we're walking here, and that seems to be what everything's pivoting on. When we asked what the town should place less focus on, there seems to be a perception that you're overly regulated, right? And that you're too focused on your regulations, whether it be zoning or any other municipal regulations, wetlands perhaps. I think that's related to a perception that it's difficult to develop in town or establish businesses or grow businesses. I can only speculate on that based on some of the comments. And then, of course, people push back on any discussion of affordable housing, even when it's qualified as housing for seniors. They feel the town shouldn't be active in either pursuing it or supporting it. And then commercial and industrial development. People feel, and interestingly, they feel the town should place less focus on it, even though growing the grand list, economic development to grow the grand list was a top priority. So my takeaway from this, after diving into some of the comments, is that people are really concerned about the type of development in town, and they don't like the idea of industrial development that is going to change the character of the town and maybe impact residential areas, or big box commercial. They want something far more nuanced. And I think that's what it comes down to. They want something that's not going to be impactful to environment, open space, or to neighborhoods, something that may be going to make the town more attractive or prestigious in some way. But I think they're scared of the idea of industrial development, and commercial development, I think, elicits associations with big box stores and other types of development of that nature. All right, any questions at this point before I ramble on too much and so I can drink some water here? No, can I keep going? I'll take that as a keep going. All right, we asked people what concerns them most about the future of Monroe. And we asked them to select up to 3 items. And this is, we could ask this question in any community, right? It's property taxes. It's always property taxes. But the question is, why, and maybe what are the second and third or fourth concerns? So property taxes overwhelmingly, number one, but funding of the school district. So I think there's a concern that At the same time, you don't want the property tax rates to go up, but because we don't want them to go up, how are we going to continue to fund our school and maintain a high quality of education in town? And I think people are sensitive to that challenge. The other one is the lack of commercial growth. And I think that ties directly into concerns about property taxes, even though people just told us that they don't want the town to focus as much on commercial and industrial growth. So that's this very interesting juxtaposition that we're working with. And I think it's the challenge for the town as well. All right, we asked people to rate the town's business environment, and this is not a great response. What we would instead like to see is we would like to have this shift over so that excellent, our results on excellent is where not good is. So we had a small fraction of people saying not good, and then the biggest percentage of people saying good, right? We want this thing to shift and push that very small percentage of people who think it's not excellent off the chart. So this is an area for growth, and it's potentially pointing to us to an area of focus for the POCD is to figure out how the business environment can be better without compromising what people value about the town. We asked people what type of commercial development should be encouraged in Monroe. And so what we heard was locally owned businesses is number one. And I have to tell you, this is universal. This is in small towns and in big cities, we hear this too. The trends aren't moving this direction, but things change, right? And in the past 6 months, we've seen a lot of change in the retail industry. Unfortunately, it's only heightened or continued trends that were already occurring. But who knows what sort of opportunities that this moment will create as rental prices just plummet and crash on properties. Does that create an opportunity for new local businesses to get started once we get through this thing? So I don't want to write that off completely. The other one was agriculture and more creative forms of agriculture as well, such as wineries and other more innovative forms of agriculture. And then the rest was pretty spread out. You know, it's interesting in reading the comments, people really hate the strip malls, right? They feel it destroys the character of town. They feel many of them aren't well maintained. We know there are vacant storefronts, and that I think that's a thorn in everyone's side. Even though we heard comments from lots of people, and mostly people I think that were newer to town, that the town just doesn't have anything to offer in terms of shopping, right? There's not enough variety. They have to go out of town if they want to buy shoes. And so we're hearing we don't want strip malls. At the same time, I want more local stores. I want more options locally. You know, the rest of these, for some reason, people feel there's enough services in town, and that may be because of all the nail salons. So we're really hearing it on more of the retail end, and to some extent on the restaurant end as well. And I should note that we recently, by recently I mean today, ran a retail gap analysis, and we subscribed to an Esri service called Business Analyst that pulls economic data, tax record data, and you have a leakage factor that's basically twice of what your surplus is in other areas, which basically means this: of all the spending potential you have in town, only half of it gets spent in town. People have to leave town to spend the rest of that money. And we have that broken up into the different retail sectors, and that'll be included within within the POCD to establish or point to potential areas of growth. But you're losing, and that's why they call it leakage. You're losing dollars that are earned, brought home to your community, that are attached to people that live in your community that are leaving town. And so there is potential for economic development and to cater to that market. And so, but you really need to better understand that market. And of course you need the real estate and the right lease rates to accommodate that. All right, we asked what are the challenges to, and here we keep drilling down in detail, right? Trying to get to what the issues are. We asked what are the challenges to economic development in Monroe, and property taxes came right to the top. Of course, if you're more diversified in your economic tax base, then you can mitigate that, right? You can arrest it or arrest or at least shrink its growth. And then the other one, no surprise, is municipal regulations and permitting. So we know there's just certain processes that aren't going to go away. If people are telling us that environmental resources, water quality, and open space, and their neighborhoods are really important, then you need those regulations to protect all of that. And much of that is mandated by the state. So this might be a question of process. Is the process working well enough? Is it overly complex for some reason? So the question is, can the process be improved? And Rick and Will, of course, know far better than I would, and that's something we're going to have to talk about. All right, when we asked where should development occur, and we were really leading people with this question. We were pointing to really the existing commercially zoned areas and corridors. But Route 25, came to the top along, not far behind was 111 for some very obvious reasons. I think the general consensus here is to put development where development already is. And if you get into the comments, you'll see that people, have the perception that there's a lot of vacant, whether it's buildings or properties in commercial areas. And so before you expand commercial areas by expanding a zone, focus on filling those properties and redeveloping those and getting those occupied. And so here it is. When we ask, do you agree that Monroe should expand land areas that allow for commercial industrial uses? People are pretty spread out on this, leaning towards agreeing, but close 20% of people strongly disagreeing, and a lot of people just being unsure about it. And I can tell you that people that strongly disagree feel that before you consider expanding, you should really improve and infill, right? That's most of the pushback was because of that reason. When we asked whether or not the commercial business zone should allow residential uses, and I'm sorry, the labels are hard to read because they're vertical there. 2/3 of participants were in favor of this idea, and we gave people options on what that could look like, such as mixed-use development or standalone development, or if standalone, assisted living or senior housing. And there was a mixed response on this, but the most important distinction is that 1/3 of people do not believe that you need to introduce residential development into business zones. And that's because of one or two reasons. One is because they feel that the town doesn't need more housing, right? Or two, or a combination of the both, is that they feel that there should be expansion of businesses in existing commercial zones, and that property should be reserved for expansion of and business development in those zones, as part of the solution to the tax concerns. And they feel that introducing residential implies that you're going to, add classrooms or teachers, and then you just end up chasing your tail on taxes. I think that's what it comes down to. Even though the type of development that you would add in a commercial area, whether it be senior housing or mixed use development with apartments or condos, generally adds very, very few students to school enrollment. But regardless, there's that perception. So the split is 1/3 no, and the other 2/3 yes, with differing opinions on what it should look like. We asked what type of housing, and people were really split on this. And once again, very consistent. Close to 30% of people said none of the above, meaning no new housing in town, more or less. Not popular seemed to be anything like a 2 to 3 family house. And of the options presented to people seem to feel comfortable with adding more senior single family houses, even though your housing portfolio is stacked very heavily with that type of housing. But people seemed receptive to townhouses and senior living facilities as well. So this was pretty spread out. We presented people with the fact that the town is mandated to plan for affordable housing and produce an affordable housing plan, and our POCD also needs to address this issue. And so given that, we asked folks, where would you focus on building affordable housing? And I think people, I think they identified the town's commercial corridors really to keep it out of the residential areas. Even though a lot of people also believe that those commercial corridors should be reserved for business development. As you can see, none of the above and other were generally people who don't think it has a place in town or oppose it for one particular reason or another. When we ask people what type of housing they would see themselves living in 10 years from now, and this is important in terms of thinking about what type of housing needs to be built or rebuilt in town. As our POCD is required to have a future land use map, and that future land use map establishes the foundation for your zoning and any changes that you make to your zoning. And so we need to think about what kind of housing people need now and 10 years from now or more. And so that's why we asked this question. And about half people see themselves in their current home. And then most of the other people really see themselves downsizing in some capacity or another. A very small fraction see themselves in a larger single family home, which means they're likely a younger couple with a growing family and they're in a starter house. So I think this is interesting, and what's more interesting is the next question. So let's get to that. Where do you see yourself living 10 years from now? And less than half of people said in Monroe, which for a community that has such a high percentage of single family houses and is otherwise a very attractive community, I think this is a pretty low statistic. I would have expected it to be higher. And that said, I haven't compared it to comparable communities yet that we've worked with when we've asked them a question such as this. But I think it's pretty low. And part of that is something that you as a community don't have control over. It's this perception that Connecticut's just is too expensive as a place to live or retire to, and that I'll be able to live much better somewhere else, right? Because my property taxes will be lower. I have to survive through forest fires and hurricanes and poor governments and no services, but but my taxes will be lower. So I think we need to probe more into this question, and when we do a public workshop in whatever capacity is, I would like to probe more into this question and find out why people don't see themselves, or why a greater percentage of residents don't see themselves, retiring in Monroe or at least sticking around for more than 10 years. And I know when you have an attractive school system, you attract people for 15 or 20 years or whatever it may be. And I know that's part of the issue. You want to get the value of the education, and then when your kid's through the system, you don't want to have to pay for it. So we know that's part of the issue, but it's something that deserves, I think, more attention as we go on here. All right, we asked people how they get around town, and to no surprise, you're a driving community. And when you take a look at the map of sidewalks and bike facilities that we very recently put together, you can see why. You've got probably 1% of your roads have sidewalks, and it might be less. I haven't run the numbers on it yet. But interestingly, when we get to the next questions, you'll see that people do have an interest in walking around and biking, even though that's not how they get around on a daily basis. So what type of transportation improvements are needed? And here we see it, right? Continued road paving and reconstruction, of course. People always want the condition of the roadways to be good. But sidewalks and crosswalks were just behind that. And just behind that are bike paths and lanes. So people do want some other options, whether it's recreational or if they live close to retail and services, perhaps they'd like to make a walking or biking trip. So I think this should be a continue, and I know this has been an area of focus for the town. It came up when we did the Route 111-25 work, and I think it should be a continued area of focus to provide people with some more transportation and recreation options. So let's keep that front and center. Traffic. Traffic's always going to be a concern, particularly in a suburban fringe community where you have a lot of traffic driving through your town to get home, right? So it's not just your local traffic, it's the traffic on its way through town trying to get home. And it's a challenge of any community that's not close to a highway that can carry that burden. So the areas of concern are, of course, Route 25 and 111, and mostly, the heavily traveled state routes. 110 and 34 less so, and a small percent in the neighborhoods. And I expect in the neighborhoods, it's more associated with safety issues such as speeding than congestion or volume. All right, what town services need improvement here? So here we're not asking about facilities, but services and roadway maintenance. And this is very common in any community. We know it's difficult for towns to keep up with maintenance. I think in Monroe, I don't know what your planned or expected road life cycle is. In some communities, it's 25 years, which means the town's not going to get around or isn't budgeted to get around to paving a road for another 25 years. And, these roads can last 10 or 15 sometimes. So that's always going to be a challenge. But next to that was schools, which I find interesting because we know you have great schools, yet people still feel like the services that the schools provide should or could be improved. And I need to dive into the comments to shed some light on that. It could be that people just want more flexibility and more extracurricular offerings. And sidewalk maintenance. You've got a very, very small share of sidewalks that are actually town sidewalks in the town right away. Most of the sidewalks that show up on the map are on private property or private walkways. So I'm not sure if there's some association with some of the private walks with the town's responsibility. But regardless, it came up as an issue. And everything else rated very low, which is good. I think part of that is people are not interested in paying more to improve any particular service. So that is suppressing some of their feelings about improving services. I think we see that in the facilities at least. But otherwise, these are pretty positive indicators on things like your public safety services, senior services. Right, our town-owned buildings in need of physical improvement, and people most people are actually unsure about this. Maybe they're not, using the buildings, entering the buildings on a regular basis. If they do, maybe it's just a library, which is an incredible facility. So people are telling us no. Of course, they're not working or trying to meet in these facilities, maybe. And then yes, and the yes responses were pretty spread out with town hall coming up quite frequently as a facility in need. Really, the whole town hall complex, of course, the annex included. All right, let me pause before I get into public engagement options. Are there any questions or comments based upon what we heard from the survey today?
Francesco, it's Rob Westland.
Hey, Rob.
Just taking into consideration the odd set of conflicting metrics on economic development, what is our takeaway on this? How do we accomplish trying to manage such a diverse set of suggestions in this area?
Yeah, so I think if I'm reading it correctly, and this is a conversation we want to have with the public, which segues us to the next discussion here. But if I'm reading it correctly, it's that people are really hypersensitive about the type of development and what it is going to look like and what the potential impacts are to the character of the town and environmentally as well. So I think I don't think that we're hearing, across the board that no more economic development. I mean, we've heard quite to the contrary, right? And of course, opinion is mixed. So there's no one representative opinion here of the community, right? It's all over the place. But if we were to find an approach that most people can live with, that it really satisfies the concerns of most of your residents, I think it's that the town is very selective and strategic about economic development, and it doesn't open things up to Walmart or, apparently that's not going to happen anymore anyway. So I think that's the takeaway. And so as to how you go about that, I think part of it is perhaps through your zoning code and taking a look if there's anything you can do to introduce design standards to ensure that what is built, you have some measure of control over what it looks like. And I think your zoning is pretty good for the record, but maybe there are opportunities there. And the second part of that is communication, that the town needs to be very intentional about communicating with the public about its efforts in economic development, why it's doing what it's doing, what the benefit's going to be, how they're plan on protecting nearby neighborhoods or open space, the environment, and the character of town. So I think it needs to be done very carefully. And I think the general concern is that things are just going to be happening kind of out of control. And that the town, out of an eagerness for growth, is just going to open the doors wide open.
I gotcha. So communication is probably, paramount when it comes to trying to grow economically. And, you've spent some time with us at this point. Just from, a high level perspective, do you see our municipal regulations varying so greatly from other equivalent towns?
No,
I'm asking because I'm wondering, is it our regulations are so off, or is it possibly process?
no, you're not. I think your zoning is right on par with most communities your size in Connecticut. That being said, I haven't really dove into your zoning to the extent that I would if I were rewriting the zoning code, right? I've thumbed through it to see what districts you have, what the controls are, but I really haven't given it a critical analysis with the thought in mind that how should this change or could this change? And I think we have room to point to that in the POCD. That's the type of recommendation the POCD would make. The POCD itself, we wouldn't rewrite any language, but we might recommend establishing design standards for commercial districts and what those standards need to control and regulate. What type of thing should be a guideline versus a requirement, a standard or requirement. I think that's the level of detail that we can get into, and there may be some opportunity there. But I don't think your regulations are deficient in any way.
Okay. It's good to get your point of view because we always hear the complaints and we've heard them over and over and over again. And, you're going in and out of all these different towns. So your point of view is certainly going to be very important.
I think it's helpful that you have a combined planning and zoning commission. I mean, that's a good thing. And I'm working with Woodbury right now to rewrite their zoning regulations. They have separate commissions, and that's part of the issue for an applicant when they have to go to both commissions. And logistically, it can add a month or two to the process. Yeah. That's really important to an applicant. On the process end, I really have to sit down with Will and Rick to see if there's anything procedurally that could or should be improved. I know these guys are on top of it. You've got great staff, so I know there's not issues there. But I don't know procedurally if things could be improved as of yet.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Francisco, it's Bruno. How are you?
Hey, Bruno. Good.
A couple things I want to talk to you about. I feel it's very, very, very important to keep people in town. The town does have a lot to offer. I think there's a lot of good people in this town. There's not a whole heck of a lot to do in this town in certain aspects. But what are your thoughts about how we keep people 30 and under in this town?
Yeah, well, it starts with housing. That's where it starts, and that's not where it ends. But right now, with your housing portfolio being so heavily weighted towards single family, you don't have the housing type that is attractive to that demographic. I mean, they're looking for apartments, basically, is what it comes down to. They're looking for rentals. And yeah, go ahead.
No, right, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Now, is there a statistic that you know of about the person that who is under 30 that has an apartment in a town? What their conversion rate is per se to get to a single family house in town?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have it handy to offer you, but it's something I'd be happy to look into for you. I don't know if there's a study that's been done out there. I know that's definitely the promise of every apartment development that goes into a suburban or rural community. The promise is that it's going to provide or produce residents for the town who are going to buy a single family home and backfill those houses that are being vacated by people moving out of town or seniors moving on. So that's the promise, and I'll check to see if I can find something that can substantiate that.
Fabulous. Number two, you said that that we have leakage.
Yeah.
Are you gonna provide some sort of recommendation that will allow, or that we should look into for allowing or getting businesses that we are not having in this town, and then maybe subsequently we can get with EDC to go out and attract those kinds of businesses to come into this town?
Yeah, we will, and I would just temper that by saying we're using the same data that CVS would use if they were looking at coming into town to build a pharmacy to try to figure out whether or not there's a market.
We have the pharmacies.
Yeah, as an example though, that's the type of data we're using. That being said, CVS typically doesn't stop there, right? They spend tens of thousands of dollars more on additional market research, such as, they'll do phone calls and they'll purchase data sets from credit card companies. So they'll have access to information that we don't have access to at a planning level. So the data we have access to is a very high level view, and it can point us in the right direction, but I don't want to promise it as a silver bullet for knowing exactly what you need to target, and that it will be absolutely positive that you'll be successful in growing that industry or retail sector.
I don't think I asked you for a silver bullet. I think I just some suggestions, because obviously there's every town's different, and every person is different.
Yeah.
What?
All right. So you'll settle for a lead bullet. All right. Good.
Lead bullets out of a shotgun are great. Ryan, obviously, like what Ryan and Rob and me like might be all different things. So.
Okay.
There's no magic wand to wave to say, hey, we need
exactly
this in town, and then it's going to attract that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm just hoping that you may have some suggestions, and then we can work with EDC to promote those, to bring them into town. I mean, we have space available, so
I think it's perfect.
A fundamental plan of things that would attract people to stay in town would be phenomenal.
Sure. Yeah, it's perfectly reasonable to provide that guidance within the POCD, and we do have some information and thoughts about that.
And I had more questions, but Rob Westland took them from me, so I'm done.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Well, let's keep things going then. All right, public engagement options. As I mentioned earlier, this is something we had planned on doing back in, I don't know, maybe April, and the world went sideways, and so here we are once again revisiting our options. And so we're putting a few options in front of you. That being said, we are, when I say we, I mean myself, Rick, Will, Ken Kellogg. We are very receptive to ideas on how we can effectively do this, given our challenges. So I'm presenting you with 4 options, but I'm open to any ideas that you have. Option one, and this came up in a discussion just this morning. Conduct an outdoor meeting at a venue such as Wolf Park, where you have I believe, a pavilion and some facilities. The pros of that are we can have a pretty good sized crowd and allow for physical distancing. I think people feel pretty comfortable in an outside venue. We wouldn't be limited by a room size. So I think we could accommodate everyone that wanted to attend. And in my experience with these meetings is they seem to average around 100, right? I've gotten up to 200 people once, and they can be as small as 30 or 40. The challenges around this, of course, are planning around the weather and just people being comfortable outside. Wouldn't have it in the afternoon. We'd probably aim for around 5:30, give people just enough time to get there. But the days are getting shorter. It's starting to get cooler. Seating, so people may have to stand. The seating may be limited. I don't know what is available. And then there's some technical challenges around audio visual, which we could, if we committed to this, we could figure that out. And I'll stop. I've got 4 options, so let me stop at each one and hear your immediate impression. So go ahead. Who wants to chime in? And this is our last big public engagement effort. And as a reminder, to date, we held several focus group meetings with invited attendees that were open to the public, but those were small format discussions.
Hey, Francisco.
Yep.
It's Bruno again.
Hey, Bruno.
I'm not bashful. I think that's a phenomenal idea. I would love to have an outdoor event that we could get some town participation in. Obviously, we do have to practice social distancing and masks and all that kind of stuff, but I think that's a great way to get some people together and go about a question and answer portion of the program.
Okay.
That's just me.
It would have to be soon because it's going to be dark and cold next month.
So that's our challenge. We need
Yes, Mike is afraid of the dark.
Right, we need 3 weeks lead time. We would need a week just to pull this together and make sure we can make it happen. And then we need 2 weeks to promote it, and we need a rain date. Right, so we need all of that.
Francisco, it's Bruno again. Is this something I mean, I understand where Mike's coming from, but is this something that we would do on a weekend, like a Saturday morning? So we don't have to worry about the light?
Whenever you want to do it. Whenever you want to do it.
Right, like not. Mike's right. If we do it on a Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we're gonna run into light issues. But if we do it Saturday morning at 9, 10 o'clock, we obviously don't run into that issue, and we can eliminate that. The cold, Mike, you'll have to wear a coat.
Well, will we get participation on a weekday, like we would in the evening?
I think I'm not talking weekday. I'm talking about weekend.
That's what I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Weekend. Will we get people that are busy on Saturdays?
Well, they're not so busy these days. That's the thing, right? Sports are not as active as they would normally be. People aren't shopping the way they used to shop. They're certainly not traveling. They're not spending the weekend in the city. So we've got a pretty captive audience. That's what we have working for us right now.
I think the COVID would allow us to have a better chance of getting more people to an outdoor event than if this was a normal, beautiful weekend where kids are in sports and you are traveling and that kind of stuff. So I think COVID does help us in that situation, but it also hurts us where we need to social distance and wear masks and so on and so forth.
Well, at the end of the day, we just got to get it done. We got to think out of the box, get creative, whatever it takes. I'm definitely on board with the outdoor meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would say that we need to figure this out. When I say we, that would be myself and Rick and Will. We need to figure out whether or not this can happen from a logistics perspective by the end of next week, because we need to commit to it by the end of next week so that we can start promoting it. We don't want to sneak up on people with a few days notice, right? We want a full 2 weeks, at the very, very minimum, a week and a half notice.
Yeah, Francisco, did you run this by the first selectman already, or?
I'm not sure Rick, Will, any discussions with Ken about this?
Not yet. Excuse me. I plan on doing that tomorrow. I wanted to see what the consensus was of the commission.
Okay.
Hi, it's Ryan. I know there is probably concern. Are we still limited by the governor on the amount of people we can have in an outdoor gathering?
100.
100.
So if this caps 100, it's shut down, or we have someone telling people to leave?
These are some of the logistics we need to figure out. Yeah, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
That's the drawback, Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but would you be able to do it by, when you do the invite, have people respond so that they know how many people are coming?
Yeah, we can do an RSVP. Absolutely. I mean, I have to tell you, those are not very accurate in both directions. Sometimes you can get more, sometimes way less. It can help us gauge. It can give us a little more insight on as to how many people we'll be dealing with.
Okay,
Alternative is a hybrid, with phone in as well as actual attendance.
It's going to start to get really challenging for us outside technically, because we need some sort of Wi-Fi. I don't know what facilities are there. We could potentially try a hotspot. I don't know what the cell phone reception is like. These are things that we need to figure out. It's not as simple as showing up at the library an hour beforehand and plugging the laptop into the cord and figuring out what button to push, right?
right.
So what are your other options?
Okay. Option 2. My screen is not moving. There we go. Conduct an indoor meeting in a school, and potentially in a school gymnasium, which are the largest spaces that you have. This also allows for, depending on the attendance, allows for adequate physical distancing. The logistics are a lot easier than the outside meeting for obvious reasons. The challenges might be securing a space. The schools right now might be really, really protective of their spaces for obvious reasons. So there's maybe a couple of phone calls we could figure this out, but it's an option I wanted to put out there.
We do have an empty school in town.
One of the issues with that is that there's not an on-duty custodian there necessarily that's going to be normally cleaning that up.
We can't use Chalk Hill. Chalk Hill is effectively closed.
Yeah.
What about St. Jude's? We have 2 empty schools in town.
Well, St. Jude's, we might be able to make a coordination. That's not closed.
It really needs to be a facility, right, that where you don't have to call the electric company to get the power turned back on and send a cleaning crew in just to get it usable.
Yeah, there's no water and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
the bathroom's unavailable. The building's been shut down.
Yeah.
So that's the other option. Now let's keep moving. Option 3 is we conduct a virtual public meeting. This is definitely the easiest, simplest at least. I don't like it. The challenges are it really doesn't allow for discussions. It turns into a presentation instead of a workshop because the audience participation is really limited. When you have 100 people on a call such as this, it's hard for everyone really to have an opportunity to speak. If you have a chat function, it doesn't work great. So I don't. While this is easy, if we're really interested in just checking the box on this, this is what we would do. But I think we all want a meaningful event.
Francisco, Bruno, again, I'm not a fan of the virtual. I think people try to talk over each other. I think not everybody's gonna get their point across. I understand it's probably the best with social distancing and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not a fan of it.
I agree. And
I think the outdoor option's the best so far as well.
Okay. And the final option is it's still virtual, but to break it up into smaller meetings that are issue based and ask people to sign up maybe for one issue. And an example of that might be you have one meeting for housing, another one for environment, open space, another one for economic development, another one for facilities, infrastructure, transportation. And that shrinks the size of the meetings. Hopefully you can get down to, I don't know, 20, 30 people. And then it's a little more feasible for people to actually have a conversation and discuss. It's still limited. It's still limited. But it's better than one big, large meeting.
And it's Bruno again. The only issue with that is if you have somebody that really wants to participate in every one of the meetings, that person's going to be there for hours, and they may have good points in certain, you just never know what point someone's going to bring up in any one of those meetings that might be beneficial to something else. And I mean, I love that idea. I mean, or you could do something outdoors if you're up for a suggestion, maybe an outdoor meeting where you break it up into two sessions. If you have, over 100 people, maybe you have 75 at one and 75 at another, and you run the same thing 2 meetings in a row and time, something along those lines. The whole virtual thing and breaking it up into meetings, again, I understand the reasoning for it. I just feel that if somebody wants to truly be a part of every aspect of it, they're going to be there for so long.
Right.
And Francisco, can I add about something to the virtual meeting?
Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
The first selectman will allow the commission and staff and Francisco to occupy the town council chambers. So we could use the screen and then everyone else would phone in.
I think that's a great option.
Okay, so that's something that the first selectman's been working on. The separation plates are already installed in the town council chambers.
I don't know if this would work, but I think we should pursue and look into whether the limitations on the numbers either technically apply or don't apply based on the fact that this is really not a private gathering. And also because if you look at the concerts and other municipal type of activities that can occur, that number is 500. So I don't know if we can be defined as that and fall under that concept, but that's something I think we need to get more insight from the first selectman's office.
Okay.
Well, it sounds like we're going with option 1 or 2 here. 2 would be indoors. Sounds better to me if we can secure one of the school gymnasiums.
Yeah, but I don't think the indoors is 100 people.
Yeah, I think we're limited to 25 people if we do indoors.
Yeah,
I thought it was 25 as well.
yeah,
So that'd
much
be a
more.
meeting of 25 people.
Yeah, with indoors, it's likely that we would have to make it issue-based, right? We could, the option for that is that we run, we have it a Saturday or a night that's dedicated to workshops, and we run one after another, right? We do an hour long or 90 minutes, whatever it is. Then we go to the next topic and people rotate in and out.
Yeah, we're never gonna do something live that's not gonna attract more than 25 people, even for a single issue. I mean, all
Yeah.
the meetings I've had on any topic in town, we've attracted many more than that for, the Route 25 study, the other things we've done.
Right, okay.
We have 19 people on this meeting right now.
Yeah.
Well, sounds like then we should look into the outdoor meeting.
I think
Yeah,
it's our best bet.
Staff will look into it tomorrow and we'll provide feedback from the first selectman's office.
Maybe we
Okay.
tell people to bring their own chairs.
Yeah, they bring their own chairs to soccer games.
Yeah.
Right. All right, are there any other questions? Any other questions at this point?
No.
Oh. All right, then, Will, you and Rick will work on this tomorrow and talk to Ken about where in town if we'd like to do this.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Francisco.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate
Thank
it.
Yeah, have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
All right, while Francisco's finishing up there, we can go on to item 5, which is public hearings. We have 2 public hearings scheduled for tonight. First one is number 5, SCP 2020-01, file number 1621A, which is McDonald's. I have a letter from Russo and Rizzo that they would like to postpone the opening of the public hearing because they are at ART, they're reviewing ART comments and as well as reviewing the Architectural Review Board comments. So we're not going to do that one.
So that would be tabled to October 1st.
Right. The second one is REA 2020-02, file number 1009E, which is the B1 MU District text amendment. And I also have a letter from Russo and Rizzo that states that they would like to withdraw their text amendment. So that one's going to be off for good. Number 7, we have a time extension, EFP 2019-03, file number, that's an excavation fill permit. I think everybody here is familiar with that one. That's the 4 and 7180 Main Street. I have a letter from Mitch requesting he states that the fill work they would like to extend the deadline for submission of the final cut and fill plans for 90 days. So I'm in favor of granting this extension. Will?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Does Will have any background on this?
It says that it appears the text amendment, oh, they're waiting for the text amendment approval. All right.
Hans is here. Hans, if you want to say anything about this on behalf, you can chime in if you like.
Who is here?
Hans?
I'm Hans Sherman. I'm representing Mitch Diesso, Hans Sherman. And we are waiting for the commission's vote on the text amendment before proceeding with this project, and that's why we would like at least a 90-day delay. We're asking for a 90-day delay.
All right, well,
We need to make a motion, right, Mike?
yeah. Can I get a motion to approve the 90-day delay?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Commissioner Ambrose make a motion to approve the 90-day delay on excavation fill permit approval. EFP 201903, file number 104E, 4 and 781 Main Street.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second.
Hi, Bruno.
Is there any other discussion on this? If not, I'll call the roll. Find the roll. Okay, Mayini,
Yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Ambrosi,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
and O'Reilly, yes. So we're going to go ahead and approve that. Next item on the agenda is number 8. This is the municipal referral. So now on this one, we have, let me find it.
It's Michael, Leon, Bruno, and Ron.
All right, so we're all here. So this is CGS 8-24 Municipal Improvement Referral Response. So this is where we're giving a positive referral back to the town council for the addition and alteration of 54 Jockey Hollow Road, the Monroe Volunteer Emergency Medical Services Facility. So we're basically giving them an okay on this. So I need a motion on the municipal referral. Do I have a motion?
Ambrosi makes a motion to approve CGS 8-24 municipal improvement referral.
All right, I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Bruno.
I have a motion and I have a second. Bruno.
Yes.
Is there any discussion on this municipal referral?
No.
No.
Me.
Then I'll call the roll. Ambrosi,
Ambrosi, yes.
Mayini,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
and O'Reilly, yes. The second matter for vote tonight is SEP Site Development Plan Approval for SEP 2019-12, file number 1620. This is 54 Jockey Hollow Road, Monroe Volunteer Emergency Medical Services. So this is for the renovation and expansion of the existing Monroe Volunteer Medical Services EMS facility, the building, the parking lot, and the site utilities. This is also an approval for the following 3 waivers. There's a proposed change in contour within 25 feet of property line. There's a proposed artificial slope greater than the permitted within 50 feet of property line. And there's a proposed artificial slope greater than the permitted 50 feet within a street line. So what we are is approving this SEP and site development plan, which is then subject to modifications and requirements as set forth on the approval. So the chair will entertain a motion on this SEP for EMS.
Commissioner Ambrosi will make a motion to approve SEP -2019-112, file number 1620A, EMS 54 Jockey Hollow Road.
Second.
I have a motion and is that Bruno?
Yes, sir.
I have a second. Is there any discussion on this tonight?
No.
Is there any discussion? No discussion?
No.
No, sir.
Then we'll call the roll. Mayini,
Yes.
Ambrosi,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
and O'Reilly, yes. So the SEP will be approved as drafted. And the municipal referral will be positive. I don't think we have anything else to deliberate on. So we're going to go to the pending minutes. Everybody have a copy of the minutes? This is the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of September the 3rd, 2020, meeting minutes. I need a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as drafted.
That's Ryan. And have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
That's Bruno's second. All right, so is there any discussion or changes in the minutes?
I don't have any.
All right, hearing none, I'll call the roll. Mayini,
Yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Ambrosi,
Yes.
Westland, Rob.
Was I seated on these minutes? Is that why I'm being asked here? Or?
No,
Yeah.
it would go to Ron. Ron is a seated alternate.
Schneider,
You're not
yes.
seated on the minutes?
Ron is seated for the meeting.
Ron?
Schneider, yes.
Then the minutes will be accepted.
Mike, you voted yes as well, right?
I did. O'Reilly is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item of business regulations review amendment work session. Does everybody have the draft zoning regulations text amendment that was emailed out? Take a minute to find it. So this is the draft amendment that we have so far. You've all had it for a couple of days now, so I want to go over it, see if there's anything you'd like to change. Basically, it's the same as we discussed at the last meeting. The purpose and the intent is to allow residential apartments for rent above commercial uses. In other words, a mixed-use development. The idea was to allow a 50-50 mix of business and residential in any building. We talked about access that shall be from central interior shared access. We talked about bedrooms may include a studio, a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, but no more than 10% of the units would be 2 bedrooms. We talked about the square foot area, no less than, what did we talk about the square foot? I think it was 1,200 square feet. No smaller than 500 square feet and no larger than 1,200 square feet.
Yeah, 12. I thought we were not at 1,200. I thought we were 1,000. Unless I'm wrong.
Well, the way
Then if
it's
I'm wrong,
drafted,
I want to test that.
yeah, we've always been talking about 1,200.
I don't remember 1,200. That's me.
That's what's written in the draft.
I'd like to discuss that.
Okay, well, we felt that too large. Well, go ahead. Will, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
These numbers are really up to you. I mean, the what you want to do.
I'm not in favor of 1,200 square feet. I'd like to reduce that number.
Well, what's an average size apartment, Will?
Well, they will range differently. Also, on some regulations will different upon whether it's a studio, a 1-bedroom, or a 2-bedroom. 1,200 is pretty big.
Yeah, it is. My fear is if we get into the 1,200 range. My fear is if we get into the 1,200 range, we could turn living rooms or dining rooms into a 3rd bedroom, and I'm not in favor of that at all. Sorry to cut you off, Will.
I mean, the accessory apartments, if you want to look at that as some of an example, you have a 1-bedroom, you have a kitchen, maybe a living space, and some of that might combine in together. That's a capped at 800 square feet.
I'm opposed to the 1,200 square feet.
1,000 is big enough.
I think.
Sorry.
1,000 is big enough, and it's a nice size apartment.
Yeah, I'm okay with 1,000.
Rob? Am I able to weigh in here?
Of course you're able to weigh in.
Yeah, we're not deliberating on anything. This is open to everybody.
Yeah, I think 1,000 is, that's a good size apartment. A lot of 1,000 square foot homes are 3-bedroom.
Exactly. So imagine making that 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
1,000 is where I would cap it, and I honestly wouldn't even mind seeing that number even lower.
Can we make it can only be a 1-bedroom? Is that possible?
Well, you have a maximum of 2-bedroom.
We're limiting it to 10% of the units can be 2 bedrooms. So if you've got 10 units, only one can be a 2-bedroom.
All right. I also see in number 2, it says that it's going all the way to Route 59. I thought we stopped with short.
Well, we haven't gotten there yet, but
and that also requires me to change something at the very beginning too, because I on the use table, wherever you land, I'll have to adjust the use table, which is on page 2. That's no big deal.
I think we last asked for some numbers regarding the
Yeah, that's what I thought. We didn't get any of that. Did Rick got any of those numbers?
The build out, the possible build out numbers.
Yeah, I'm still working with the health department on that.
Well, I think we need to spend some more time on this. So, when will you have those numbers, Rick, you think?
So I was trying to get those by tonight, so next week or for the October 1st meeting.
Okay. Are you gonna bring this to the subcommittee again or no? Rick,
Because we're meeting next Monday.
Are we having a subcommittee meeting next Monday? Has that been firmed up?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're still undecided on the geographic limit up Route 25. So we'll leave that open until we get some more information. Also, we decided we
Hey,
want.
Mike, it's Bruno, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but why would this come back to the subcommittee?
Well, we have a subcommittee meeting before the next general meeting. That's the only reason I can think of to review it.
Yes, it's the data, Bruno, that I can provide.
Right, but then that data's got to, okay, so, all right, so you
And
can
then it's
provide
gonna
that
go
to the
full-
subcommittee.
It's still got to come in
All right,
front
so
of.
you're going to provide it to the subcommittee, and then the subcommittee's the three of us will talk about it, and then we're going to propose it to the
Full commission.
full commission.
Right.
Aye, Captain.
All right. Okay, were there any other questions or things that any of the commissioners would like to see added to the text amendment?
Does it say anything about the septics being tested or being a certain size?
Well, it's subject to the health department approval.
Yeah, I think it's on section 10B. Maybe.
Oh, look at you.
Right, they're ultimately limited by their septic capacity as to the number of bedrooms on the lot, yes. We don't have to, delineate that.
And it's important that everyone review in its entirety Section 7, the affordable units. This is something that Francisco is going to be recommending in the POCD update because we have to deal with it. So it's an important component.
Okay.
Is doing a unit like this are we gonna have to look at open space at that time or no? Because I mean, it's not a subdivision per se. But is that something that we'd have to consider?
We had talked about that earlier, and I kind of fell out of that. We've kind of fell out of that.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and we decided that we weren't going to make any requirements for open space.
Okay.
Since we're talking about business districts.
Although there is a provision for sidewalks and site amenities.
No, I think he's talking about open space provisions.
Oh, dedicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, obviously the generation of residents is what generates the demand for open space. So there are some places where no matter what kind of development, if you're generating residents, you would have some kind of mixed, but I think we decided it's not at that level that mattered that much.
Okay.
All right, then we'll try to get a little bit more our hands around what this build out could look like on the southern part of Route 25, given the maximum number of units and given what the health department I don't know. It's kind of going to be a guess on their part.
Yeah, but again, if we could get to, what did we want, to Purdy Hill, to Knollwood, and then all the way to,
Route 59.
yes, but I'm okay with dropping it down to Knollwood.
So you're okay dropping it down to Norwood? Norwood?
Yeah, again, I think the discussion last time was the thought process of kind of preserving Stepney Green a little bit. I don't want to speak for Rob, but I think that was kind of the discussion me and him had.
That's what I remember as well. Yep.
Yes, that's what we discussed.
What was that?
That's what we discussed was to get some numbers for Knollwood.
Okay. And south of there also?
No, we discussed
south
that.
of Knollwood. Yeah.
So if
So
I
from-
understand, you want numbers that go to Purdy Hill,
Correct.
the additive to Knollwood,
Correct.
and the additive to 59.
Correct.
All right, good. All right, so then I expect to bring this back to the subcommittee on Monday. Hopefully, Rick, you'll get some numbers by then. And I'd like to bring a final draft to the next meeting, the next regular meeting of our commission, so that we can move it forward, because it's going to require noticing the towns, it's going to require noticing the other agencies as well before we can open it to a public hearing.
Hey, Mike, it's Bruno. I have a question. We're
Yes.
gonna get to the subcommittee with the final stuff. Then we have to bring that to the commission.
For the
How are we
final,
gonna-
okay, yes.
Right, but then how are we gonna have a final draft at the same time?
Because we
Well-
won't have those numbers we just asked for by the next meeting.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm.
we will have the numbers.
We'll
We will
have
have
them, but we want to discuss before it's a final draft, right?
Well, all right, not final draft, semi-final draft.
We're in the semifinals. All right. That's
And
right.
if it's okay, look, you have this draft, and if you look at it over the next few days, and if you want to, if you have any additional comments or anything that you think's missing, if you email that to me, I can bring that to the subcommittee meeting on Monday. So if you all have any other specific comments that you didn't get to do tonight, and you want to send them to me, that'd be great. But just do that before the meeting that we're going to have on Monday night.
That's a great idea, Will. Very good. Smart.
That's a good idea. And the faster we get the build out numbers, the quicker we can kind of look those over and come to a conclusion on them as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this topic? Okay, there, at the last meeting that the subcommittee had, we also saw a presentation for a possible project at the Walmart Center, where Walmart was going to go. You probably all read it in the newspapers or on the Monroe online site. It pretty much summed it up. They want to put in some parking for vehicles for Amazon. And it looks like it will generate as much revenue as a Walmart would generate. So that's something in the pipeline. There's also a proposal for a over 62 senior housing project, which you probably also saw that in the newspaper, but that's going to be something they're going to talk to us more about as well before we move forward on that. That's a affordable housing project for over 62, I believe, or 63.
62.
62. And I think that was it for the subcommittee. So let's move along on to the commission reports. I don't have any reports. Although I have one thing. I'd like you to look at the for 64 Cambridge Drive. They did submit some information, a manifest that was quite detailed, in my opinion, as to the material that they have brought in there over the past 18 months. My only question will be, what percent of the material that they brought in does this represent? Is this all of the material? Is this 10% of the material? But look it over, so at least you can get an idea of, what kind of information they're collecting on the material that they're bringing in.
The other question might also be how much of that stayed on this.
Yeah, and how much didn't get reported is my thought as well. How do we not know whether there was other truckloads brought? And how are we going to oversee this going forward?
Right. Well, we're going to ask for like a calendar to see, just to correlate what they've given us to what happened on the ground, basically. I mean, it's great. They did wonderful inspections and certifications and that, but what percent are we looking at here?
If it's not staying on property, it's not helping the cause.
Were all the commissioners able to open up the linkage on the manifest? Because we can provide hard copies.
No, I didn't open it up, but I think that, as us being a commission here, I think that we need to get our own licensed hydrologist and a licensed environmental professional to look at that stuff. I don't think that should be up. We should be having somebody else look at that, Mike. I don't know how the other commissioners agree, but I think that we should.
Will, are we allowed to talk in this much detail about it, given that it's an application?
Yeah, I was going to say those topics are fine to bring up that we would be looking at, but the deliberation about that you should reserve for when you are next have this on the agenda.
Okay. I just wanted to let everybody know that the manifests are available and you could look at them.
Awesome.
Any other commissioners' reports tonight before we adjourn?
Will, how are we making out with the zone change on 25?
The public hearing is October 22nd.
Okay.
And my question, Mike, was, has there been any discussion with Ken, or do you have any idea when we're potentially going to be continuing, meetings in chambers, in person rather than doing virtual meetings?
So Rick, you had some information on that, right? On a hybrid meeting in chambers?
Yeah, the limitation's 25 people.
Which I think would work well. You could have your public participation virtual and we could all be in there in person. Is that what we're considering here?
I think so, because the plastic separation screens are up. It's ready to go.
I think that they've announced that that's what they're working towards. I don't think it's quite a green light yet, but I think it will be soon.
Have they had any meetings in the council chambers yet?
I think they've been allowing like the subcommittee type meetings. I don't know if they've had any though. We've had some outdoors.
Right. Okay.
I'm not aware of any.
All right, so we'll meet outdoors on Monday, assumedly?
Yes.
All right.
Oh no, Georgia, did we go to chambers?
Oh yeah, chambers.
Yeah, for the subcommittee, you're in chamber.
Because we don't anticipate a big
Chambers was a go-ahead for that.
All right, great. Okay, Rick, do you have a report tonight?
Just to recap, staff is going to talk to the first selectman and go over what options he recommends and for whatever reasons. So we will provide that so you can digest that over the weekend. It's imperative, as you heard from Francisco, that we get going. We need 3 weeks to put this together. So that's a high priority. So to me, it's a health department issue and determining what option is going to be held.
And if you need any help from me, chairs, tables, anything to do with setup, let me know. I'm
Will
available.
do. Thanks, Rob.
And Rick, do we have to vote on this or we can just go ahead with it?
Vote on what?
Vote on where we're gonna have it at.
Well, we gotta work out logistics before we, no, it's just gonna be a special meeting so the chairman can call a special meeting.
Yes, the chairman. Yeah.
And it's not really the commission meeting, they're gonna be the POCD committee meeting. So
Okay,
we kind of call those at will.
okay.
We have to do agenda and all that, but like Francisco said, we're gonna need a couple weeks lead time to advertise, so.
Okay.
All right, great. Then, is there any other business?
Done.
All right, then I'll
Adjourn.
in a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Commissioner
I have
Mayne.
a motion.
Second.
I have a second. So
From Ambrosi.
8:51, we will adjourn the meeting.